Well, first of all, I would like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri Wurrung people of the Kulin Nation, the traditional custodians of the land in which we stand today. Thank you all for being here this morning. As Tash introduced me, I'm Irma. I work at Breathe Architecture, and Breathe has been at the forefront of sustainable design for almost 25 years in Australia. So following Dr. Lee's presentation, I'm really happy to see that a lot of the things he stated from the REBA things that you have to specify in the UK, we do that at Breathe intuitively in all the projects we work on. So we're really proud of being part of that transformation in Australia. So I'm going to present to you a project that we did for the National Gallery of Victoria, that it's kind of capturing a lot of the things we work at Breathe and our way to transmit all this knowledge that we have as well, and opening a conversation about what we're experiencing nowadays regarding the housing crisis. So just to start, one of the key strategies as well that Dr. Lee pointed out is what's going on with the sizes of our houses. So I'm going to talk about that now. So a brief history of these. So in Australia, around the 1950s, houses were on average 100 square meters and had multiple rooms that were used throughout. They were also lightweight, and they were really different from what we're building now. And then as well in the 1950s, 40s, the average occupancy of those houses were 4.5 people. And this is where we are now. Our houses are 236 square meters average in Australia, and the average occupancy is 2.5 people. So what's going on there? We can see that there's a 230% increase in the housing size, but a 50% decrease on the occupancy rates of these houses. So on that, when we were working on this project for the National Gallery, we always address these principles as well as a practice, but we were thinking of, well, we are in a housing crisis, as we all are aware of, not only in Australia, but all over the world. We are in a climate crisis, which will just get worse and worse, as Dr. Lee shows the graphs. And we are also trying to tackle the isolation crisis that has been happening all around the world. So we were working on that, then we went to the statistics, and we were like, well, how are we going to convey these messages to the broader audience at the National Gallery? And also talking about how Australia has one of the biggest housing in the world, and also the emissions equivalent of those houses are one of the biggest in the world. So I was just going through the latest Green Building Council report of our homes weighed a ton. I would recommend having a look. It was just released early May. So we have now this graph that talks about the average square meter of housing in the developing countries, and we can see that Australia is definitely leading that just before United States, which is a big problem. And also, there's this simulation graph that if we were to keep building business as usual, by 2050, we will be consuming 7 to 11% of the carbon budget we've got for the climate agreement the Paris Climate Agreement targets. So that means that we will eat a lot of the carbon that we have left to meet those targets. So there's another report that it's really interesting. Melbourne University and Terroir have brought on the reduction roadmap that was developed around 10 years ago in Denmark, and they've translated these to Australia and Australian emissions. So another interesting thing in part of this report is that the current housing emissions are around 461 per square meter, and then if we wanted to operate within planetary boundaries, we would have to reduce those emissions to 6.63 kilograms of CO2 per square meters. And then I guess Breathe, as being part of these conversations with academics and other practices, that means that we need to reduce our emissions by roughly 98%. So what does that mean for the building industry and the architecture industry if we need to rethink the way we're building today to make it 98% different of what we're doing? So I think we all need, all the people attending today, we need to rethink our practice radically if we are going to do something to save or at least improve some of the conditions of the climate moving forward. As part of this report as well, and as Lee also draw on, I guess what we do at Breathe when we start every project is how can we build less, because that's a really easy, straightforward way to tackle carbon emissions. And this carbon reduction principles really talks about how the biggest things we could do is build less, reuse or repurpose, and then so on to have the biggest or lower impact on the way we design. So the project then came about as Home Truth, and this was a really special project for us because we wanted to convey all this thinking and research and ethos that we have as a practice in this exhibition. And it draws on a lot of things we do. So first of all, when we were doing this, we were also aware of the wastage in the construction industry. So all of this structure was prefabricated in Melbourne from sustainably sourced pine. And because of that, we were able to have basically no offcuts, and it was all delivered to site. So we avoided time on site and also wastage. When we were designing this as well, we designed everything for disassembly. So at the end of the life, the exhibition is going to be taken down and it's going to be used to build an actual house. We also designed a strategy of only specifying 3 materials, and one of them is a really innovative material that has been developed in New Zealand, but now has a facility in New South Wales named Safeboard, and it's made of 100% recycled content, that being Tetra Pak, the packages we use for milk and so on, and soft plastics. So even though we don't advocate for the production of these materials that cannot be recycled, we are conscious that that's an issue we have now. And this material is giving us the opportunity to reduce this waste going straight into landfill. So I would recommend checking that out. It's already available in Bunnings and other suppliers. And it's been developed to substitute plasterboard or wall lining. But the other thing with this is us rethinking architecture on making materials or specifying materials that are low in their embodied carbon, and also the way they look are going to be different as well. So trying to change that status quo of thinking when we're designing with these products. We wanted to create this experience, so the average, the square meter floor plan of the exhibition, it's 236 square meters, drawing on that average from Australia. And then as you walk through the maze, you are meant to be disoriented and also be overwhelmed with the scale of the house. And as you go through, you have these moments to get lost and admire the grandiosity of what the average square meter housing looks like in Australia, and how, as well as a result of that, the more space we've got, the bigger the emissions, and also the more stuff we need to buy to fill those houses. And I know there was a bit of a mention there of the structural impacts of carbon regarding concrete and steel, but we also don't have to forget that the other 50% of those embodied emissions come from interior furnishings and FF&E. So we do have a big impact when we're specifying these projects if we chose low carbon materials, also not using any sort of glues on the specification, because that avoids these products being reused. And because of the trends on commercial setups or even in residential setups, it's really common for these houses or projects to be renovated in a period of time. So if those materials get just out of the building and not disposed correctly, we're increasing the carbon, embodied carbon of those structures as we go. So you can see here this material Safeboard that I touched on, and the other interesting thing that I got when we finished the exhibition was that it made you feel as well that you were going through a sea of waste, which is a bit of a reflection of the state of the world at the moment. And as you go through the maze, you come to this moment of calmness. You go through this portal, which is exactly the same three materials throughout, but I guess designed in a different way. And when you go through that portal, the floor plan area of this is the smallest version of Nightingale housing, a tail house, which is roughly 50 square meters. And what we wanted to do is not criticize any person's way of living, because we do acknowledge that a lot of people don't really have a choice in the way they live. But we just wanted to open a conversation of how can we design and think differently, how can we build with less and also build well-designed spaces that are comfortable. And Breathe, as a sister company from Nightingale Housing, we believe in creating communal areas outside the typical dwellings for people to build community and to perhaps, maybe they don't have these huge square meter houses, but they have other places to connect or have other sort of engagement with the residents of the buildings we design. At the end as well, we've got this beautiful stone that we sourced from Wurundjeri country that we work really close with the NGB First Nations people committee. So this rock at the end of the exhibition is acknowledging the 65,000 years of First Nation knowledge in Australia and how they were building respecting the land since then. The whole exhibition as well was built really quickly because we were using modern methods of construction, and it was all manufactured off-site. And it's really given us an opportunity to engage in broader conversations on how we can envision a better way of living and how this is meant to be just one of the million solutions that we could use for the housing crisis and for the climate crisis with embodied carbon. Another interesting thing that we do at Breathe is that we know that operational carbon can be easily solved if we are to design 100% electric buildings. But the one thing that helps us produce these net zero operational carbon buildings is for us to embed in the OC rules of the Nightingale housing that we will buy 100 certified% green power. And that's a thing that all of us could do right now if we call our energy provider. And if we are doing that, then the industry will see an increase of investing in renewable energy, and that will help us lower emissions in the long term. Thank you so much. I will encourage everyone that haven't seen the exhibition. It's going to be open at the National Gallery until mid-July. And if you've got any questions about Breathe or the way we design our buildings, please feel free to come forward. Thank you.